Warren Buffett, the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway, is without a doubt one of the most influential investors of our time, with an incredible investing track record. Since he took over Berkshire Hathaway in 1965, over 68 years ago, he's produced a yearly average return of 19.8%, compared to the S&P 500 average of 9.9%. A $100 investment in Berkshire Hathaway at the time would be worth over $2.5 million today. This has made his shareholders very wealthy and given Warren a cult-like following. And once a year, they meet in Buffett's hometown of Omaha for the Berkshire Hathaway Shareholder Meeting, where investors can meet other like-minded people and learn from the wisdom of Warren and Charlie. And in this year's meeting, they talked about the state of the economy, the banking system, their thoughts on AI, the economic problems with China, and much, much more. The meeting was around 6 hours long, but today we're going over the key moments from this year's Berkshire Hathaway Shareholder Meeting. Number 1. Their thoughts on the banking system.
It used to be that if you saw people lining up at a bank, the proper response was to get into the line. The banking system has changed so much over the years, and we did something enormously sensible, in my view, when we set up the FDIC. As many as 2,000 banks had failed in 1 year back after World War I. I mean, bank runs were just part of the picture, and if you have people that are worried about whether their money is safe in a bank and all trying to withdraw it, you can't run an economy very well. So the FDIC was very logical. It's got changed over the years some. Even though the FDIC limit is $250,000, that's the way the statute reads, but that is not the way the U.S. is going to behave any more than they're going to let the debt ceiling cause the world to go into turmoil. And I can't imagine anybody in the administration, in the Congress, in the Federal Reserve, whatever it may have been, FDIC, I can't imagine anybody saying, I'd like to be the one on television tomorrow and explain to the American public why we're keeping only $250,000 insured, and we're going to start a run on every bank in the country and disrupt the world financial system. We don't have any worry. We keep our money in cash and treasury bills at Berkshire because we keep $128 billion or whatever it was at the end of the quarter, and we want to be there if the banking system temporarily even gets stalled in some way. It shouldn't. I don't think it will, but I think it could. And I think that the incentives in bank regulation are so messed up, and so many people have an interest in having them messed up, that it's totally crazy. I mean, you'll have to have a punishment for the people that do the wrong thing, to hold the CEO accountable. The CEO gets the bank in trouble. Both the CEO and the directors should suffer. The stockholders of the future shouldn't suffer. They didn't do anything. It doesn't teach anybody any lessons or anything. It teaches the lesson is that if you run a bank and you screw it up, you're still a rich guy, and the clubs don't drop you, and the charity groups don't quit asking you to their benefits, and the world goes on. That is not a good lesson. I think there's some work to be done, but I don't think it's not a difficult problem. It's just we screwed up the answer and we screwed up the communication of it. Charlie?
Well, I'm so old-fashioned that I kind of liked it better when banks didn't do investment banking.
Oh,
I don't think having a bunch of bankers, all of whom are trying to get rich, leads to good things. But I think a banker should be more like an engineer. He's more like into avoiding trouble than he is getting rich.
Yeah, and they could do fine.
They can do fine that way. And I think we had a big mistake when we created a bank where everybody who joins it plans to get rich.
Yeah.
It's a contradiction in values.
Number 2. Addressing the commercial real estate fears.
Charlie Munger has warned of a brewing storm in the U.S. commercial property market, with American banks full of what he said were bad loans as property prices fall. Please elaborate on what's going on in commercial real estate. How bad will the losses be, and what sectors or geographies look particularly bad? I'll just add an addendum from another viewer who wrote in and wanted to know if Berkshire would be more active in commercial real estate as a result.
Well, Berkshire's never been very active in commercial real estate. It works better for taxable investors than it does for corporations taxed the way Berkshire is. So I don't anticipate huge effects on Berkshire, but I do think that the hollowing out of the downtowns in the United States and elsewhere in the world is going to be quite significant and quite unpleasant. I think the country will get through it all right, but as they say, it will often involve a different set of owners.
Yeah, and the buildings don't go away, but
the owners do.
Well, but most people like to buy with non-recourse in real estate, and one time I asked Charlie, there was some real estate guy we were talking to, and how do they decide how much a building like this is worth? And the answer is it's whatever they can borrow without signing their name. And if you look at real estate generally, you'll understand what the phenomena that's happening if you remind yourself that that's the attitude of most people that have become big in the real estate business, and it does mean then that the lenders are the ones that get the property, and of course they don't want the property usually, so then the real estate operator counts on negotiating with them, and the banks tend to extend and pretend, and there's all kinds of activities that arrive out of commercial real estate development, which occurs on a big scale. But it all has consequences, and I think we are starting to see the consequences of people who could borrow at 2.5% and find out it doesn't work at current rates, and they hand it back to somebody that gave them all the money they needed to build it.
Number 3, the AI hype.
If you went into BYD's factories in China, you would see robotics going in at an unbelievable rate. So we're going to see a lot more robotics in the world. I am personally skeptical of some of the hype that has gone into artificial intelligence. I think old-fashioned intelligence works pretty well.
There won't be anything in AI that replaces a gene. I'll state that unqualifiedly. It can do amazing things. Bill Gates brought me out the latest, maybe not the latest version, but one he thought maybe I could handle, which has to be careful with me in terms of leading me too fast. And it did these remarkable things. It couldn't tell jokes. Bill told me that ahead of time, and it prepared me, and it just isn't there. But it can do all kinds of things, and when something can do all kinds of things, I get a little bit worried, because I know we won't be able to uninvent it, and we did invent, for very, very good reason, the atom bomb in World War II, and it was enormously important that we did so. But is it good for the next 200 years of the world that the ability to do so has been unleashed? We didn't have any choice, but when you start something, well, Einstein said after the atom bomb, he said, this has changed everything in the world except how men think. And I would say the same thing not the same thing, I don't mean that, but I mean with AI, it can change everything in the world except how men think and behave. And that's a big step to take. It's a good question, and it's the best answer we can give.
Number 4, their thoughts on Elon Musk's extreme goal setting.
Well, yes, I think Elon Musk overestimates himself, but he is very talented. So he's overestimating somebody who doesn't need to overestimate to be very talented.
And Elon he's a brilliant guy, and I would say that he might score over 170, but he dreams about things, and his dreams have got a foundation.
He would not have achieved what he has in life if he hadn't tried for unreasonably extreme objectives. He likes taking on the impossible job and doing it. We're different. Warren and I are looking for the easy job that we can identify.
Yeah. If we can do it playing tic-tac-toe, we'll do it, I mean,
we have a wholly different way of going.
It's the whole way. Yeah. But we don't want to compete with Elon in a lot of things. I mean,
we don't want that much failure.
Yeah. Yeah, and it takes over your life, and I mean, in a way that it just doesn't fit us. But there are going to be, well, there have been important things done by Elon already, and it requires, fanaticism isn't the word.
Yeah, it is the word.
Okay. Well, it isn't quite the word, but it's a dedication to solving the impossible, and every now and then they'll do it, but it would be torturous to me or Charlie, and I like the way I'm living, and I wouldn't enjoy being in his, but he wouldn't enjoy being in my shoes either. No.
Number 5, their thoughts on the dollar as a reserve currency.
It's very interesting. I mean, we are the reserve currency, and I see no option for any other currency to be the reserve currency. And I think that nobody understands the situation better than Jay Powell. But he's not in control of fiscal policy, and every now and then he drops a few hints. And there was no question that when the pandemic broke out, I mean, it was a semi-war-like situation, but nobody knows how far you can go with the paper currency before it gets out of control. And particularly if you're the world's reserve currency, nobody knows the answer to that. And you don't want to try and pick out the point at where it does become a problem, because then it's all over. I think we should be very careful. I mean, we all learned Keynesianism, and we applied it in World War II to the advantage of the country, and we did everything we could to prevent inflation during the war. And then the war ended in August of 45, and I think in January 46, and I'm not giving you exact figures at all now, but in January 46, I think the rate of inflation was at something like 1% or thereabouts. And by the end of the year, I think it was at like 15%. And again, I'm doing this from long memories, but it's easy for America to do a lot. But if we do too much, it's very hard to see how you recover once you let the genie out of the bottle and people lose faith in the currency. And they behave in an entirely different manner than they do when they feel that if they put some money in the bank or have a pension plan or whatever it may be, that they're going to get out something with roughly equal purchasing power. And it just changes the economy, and all kinds of things can happen then. And I can't predict them, and nobody else can predict them, but I do know they aren't good. And we are not as well off in relation to curbing inflation expectations, which become self-fulfilling, and we are not as well off as we were earlier. And Berkshire is better prepared than most investments for that kind of a period. But I said this in the annual report, but we aren't perfectly prepared because there's no way to perfectly prepare. You don't know what course of action will occur. And America's an incredible society, rich. We got everything going for us, but that doesn't mean we can just print money indefinitely as debt. And it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. Charlie?
Well, at some point, printing money to buy votes will be counterproductive.
Yep.
And we don't know exactly where that comes. And if something is going to be dangerous and unproductive, you ought to keep it a fair distance away. Now, if you have a culture that is exceptionally strong, like Japan, they have done some strange things there.
But they couldn't have been the reserve currency.
No, of course not. But Japan bought back most of the national debt and a lot of the common stocks, and debt. Just the Federal Reserve owns practically everything in Japan, and the country's working. It's had 30 years of economic stasis, but it's not going to hell. I really admire Japan, but I don't think we should try and imitate it. I don't think we're as good as Japan at taking.
They have a cohesive culture, and we don't, Charlie.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
In Japan, everybody's supposed to suck it up and cope, and in America, we complain.
Number 6, others' mistakes can create opportunities.
I think value investors are going to have a harder time now that there's so many of them competing for a diminished bunch of opportunities. So my advice to value investors is to get used to making less.
Charlie has been telling me the same thing the whole time we've known each other. I mean, we get along wonderfully because...
But we are making less.
Yeah, well, but that mostly, I think, is because it's larger.
When we were younger.
Now, we never thought we could manage $508 billion.
No,
or what, or five. But I would argue that there's going to be plenty of opportunities, and part of the reason there are going to be plenty of opportunities, the tech doesn't make any difference or any of that. I mean, if you look at how the world's changed in the years since 1942 when I started, you'd say, well, the world changing or new things coming along don't take away the opportunities. What gives you opportunities is other people doing dumb things. And it's that. And I would say that, well, the 58 years we've been running Berkshire, I would say there's been a great increase in the number of people doing dumb things, and they do big dumb things, and the reason they do it to some extent is because they can get money from other people so much easier than when we started. So you could start 10 or 15 dumb insurance companies in the last 10 years, and you could become rich if you were adroit at it, whether the business succeeded or not, and the underwriters got paid, and the lawyers got paid. And that creates, if that's done on a large scale, which it couldn't be done 58 years ago, you couldn't get the money to do some of the dumb things that we wanted to do, fortunately. And investing has disappeared so much from this huge capitalistic market that anybody can play in, but that the big money is in selling other people ideas. It isn't outperforming. And I think if you don't run too much money, which we do, but if you're running small amounts of money, I think the opportunities will be greater. But then Charlie and I have always differed on this subject. He likes to tell me how gloomy the world is, and I like to tell him we'll find something, and so far we've both been kind of right.
Number 7, the one lesson to avoid mistakes.
You should write your obituary and then try and figure out how to live up to it. You just want to make sure you don't make any mistakes that take you out of the game or come close to taking you out of your game. you should never have a night when you're worried about investing. I mean, assuming you have any money to invest at all, and you should spend a little bit less than you earn, and you can spend a little bit more than you earn, and then you've got debt, and the chances are you'll never get out of debt. I'll make an exception in terms of a mortgage on your house, but credit card debt, we're in the credit card business big time, and the world will stay in the credit card business. But why get behind the game? And if you're effectively paying 12 or 14 or whatever percent you're paying on a credit card, you're saying I'm going to earn more than 12 or 14% of money. And if you can do that, come to Berkshire Hathaway. So it's not that complicated. Tom Murphy, the first time I met him, said two things to me. He said, you can always tell someone to go to hell tomorrow. Well, that was great advice then. And think of what great advice it is when you sit down at a computer and screw your life up forever by telling somebody to go to hell or something else in 30 seconds and you can't erase it. You don't need to vilify anybody to make your point on subjects of discussion. And then they give you another general piece of advice. I've never known anybody that was basically kind that died without friends. And I've known plenty of people with money that have died without friends.
Well, it's so simple to spend less than you earn and invest shrewdly and avoid toxic people and toxic activities and try and keep learning all your life, et cetera, and do a lot of deferred gratification because you prefer life that way. And if you do all those things, you are almost certain to succeed. And if you don't, you're going to need a lot of luck. And you don't want to need a lot of luck. You want to go into a game where you're very likely to win without having any unusual luck.
I'd add one more thought, too. You need to know how people can manipulate other people, and you need to resist the temptation to do it yourself.
Oh, yes. The toxic people who are trying to fool you or lie to you, who aren't reliable in meeting their commitments. The great lesson of life is get them the hell out of your life.
Yep.
And do it fast. Do it fast.
Number 8, the best defense in a recession.
Your best defense is your own earning power. If you're the best doctor in town, if you're the best lawyer in town, if you're the best teacher in town, or even if you're the 10th best, you're going to make a good living. I mean, the economy is productive, and you will succeed with your talents, but you won't succeed by hoarding dollars. You'll just succeed by the fact that your value to the community, which is a rich community overall, is sustained. And so the best investment is always in yourself. That's the answer I would give you.
Number 9, Buffett's thoughts on corporate tax.
We were paying 52% taxes, federal income taxes, when I bought control in the partnership of Berkshire Hathaway. I mean, the tax rate come down dramatically. We will live with this tax code, and we do not think corporations are overtaxed in the United States. But we've got a new law that hasn't yet, the regulations haven't been written on, and when we know what the game is, we will absolutely figure out a way to pay 15% every year, and which generally we've been paying anyway. And as I pointed out, if there were 1,000 corporations in the United States that paid what Berkshire has been paying, nobody else in the United States, no individual, no corporation would ever pay any income tax, Social Security tax, gift tax, estate tax, anything else. 1,000 like Berkshire Hathaway would produce the revenue that's being produced by the federal government, that's being derived under the present tax code from everybody in the United States. And I don't feel badly about that, and I'd love to get it to what it's 1/500th or something of the sort. But I'd like to do it. If we can do it at this rate, I'm happy to do it.
Number 10, Charlie's take on capitalism.
Free market capitalism automatically, with a lot of property in private hands and free trade and all that, automatically creates GDP per capita that grows and helps everybody, including the people at the bottom. Helps everybody a lot. But inherent in the process, there's a lot of pain in that free market capitalism. For instance, to the Portuguese workers in a textile company in New Bedford. And nobody's ever figured out how to take all the pain out of it. We do have government safety nets to take some of the pain out. We make those safety nets a little bigger as time goes by. But apart from that, if you try and take all the pain out, you'll also take all the gains out of it. You won't have a growing GDP per capita. You'll have an economy like Russia's, which has been characterized as saying they pretend to pay us and we pretend to work.
Yeah. Yeah, the other systems haven't worked better, but it also produces more and more disparities in wealth, and people that do nothing but get assets under management without actually performing anything extra make fortunes. And I mean, it's a job of government to keep the best aspects of capitalism while not causing people that only speak Portuguese to suffer in the process. I mean, the two aren't compatible politically over time, and we stumble along making progress on things like Social Security and all that, and we are a lot better off than we are when I was born.
Net, the United States has done a very good job of this tension between capitalistic growth and a growing social safety net. We can be pretty proud of our country looking backward.
Yeah. That may be why we have 25% of the world's GDP, starting with 0.5% of the population, and did it in a few centuries. I mean, it's a miracle. And it wasn't because we were smarter. Well, you got to say there must be something to the system that's worked pretty well, even though it's produced a civil war and all kinds of things, and women, not getting a shot at anything, even after they passed the 19th Amendment. It's a work in progress. I think actually there's been progress, but it's mankind's nature to see the things wrong with it.
It's even worse, it's man's nature to take the progress as a right, not something to be earned or strived for, but something that should automatically just flow in over the transom. And that attitude is poison.
And there you have it. Those are some of the key moments from the 2023 Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meeting. In the comments below, let me know your thoughts on this year's meeting and if you want me to dive deeper on any of these points in the future. As always, guys, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.